Good morning, Ms. Silo. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
I see that there hasn't been any improvement.
Actually, Chair, it's surprising there hasn't, because if the Chair has regard to the spine of the file, the correction has been made. How it did not find itself to the cover is a matter we're discussing this morning, but I have been assured that they all will be reprinted and refiled. At least there's progress, the spine is correct.
Yeah, well, I guess we must acknowledge the progress that has happened.
Thank you, Chair.
Even if it doesn't meet the expectations that we had.
Undoubtedly, Chair, we shall endeavor to improve.
Yes.
And this is now, Chair, marked 88 BB8C. Both A, B, and C will all be.
You started by saying 88.
I know, Chair. I'm looking at 88 and it affects what I say. They'll all be corrected this afternoon. So the next time the Chair has regard to these files, they'll be.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we are still on M&S reports.
Yeah.
And we are now dealing with the M&S report that is titled The Relocation of 2 OEMs to Durban.
Yes.
The Chair will recall Mr. Sidumedi dealt with 95, 100, 1064, and appointment of TAs.
Yes.
Today we deal with the relocation, and tomorrow Dr. Bloom will deal with transactions flowing from the advice of the TAs, which will be tomorrow, and that will complete the M&S reports.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. The witness we have today is Mr. Tobani Mnyandu, and with your permission, may he be sworn in, Chair.
Okay, please administer the oath or affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Tobani Trevor Mnyandu.
Do you have any objections to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I do not.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear that all the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, before Mr. Mnyandu deals with his presentation, perhaps to place his testimony in its proper context, the Chair will recall that last week, Mr. Gonzalez, representing the minority shareholder in the CNR consortium, testified, and he spoke in large part on the relocation. The evidence of Mr. Gonzalez concerns relocation from the perspective of the bidders, or the minority shareholder within the bidder. Mr. Mnyandu today is dealing with the same issue, except from a different angle. He's dealing with it from the Transnet perspective, and whether Transnet was aware in part of the increases in relocation costs that were being proposed, what position it took in regard to those increases, and whether it was agreeable to such increases. So at times the testimony might sound familiar, but we would like to point out that this is from the Transnet perspective. Thank you, Chair. With that context then, Mr. Mnyandu, you confirm that you have prepared a presentation on the relocation of the OEMs to Durban. You should have next to you a file marked BB8C.
Yes, I confirm, Chair.
And you confirm that that is the presentation we have prepared?
Indeed, it is so.
The structure of the file, Chair, is the first part of the file is the actual presentation. There are tabs 1 to 7 that follow, documents under tabs 1 to 7 that follow the presentation. Mr. Mnyandu, please explain what those documents are in tabs 1 to 7.
These are documents that are not necessarily annexed to our report.
Well, You said he's testifying from the perspective of Transnet. Do you,
No, he is giving a report on how Transnet dealt with the relocation issue.
yes, but let me know first about him. About him.
Oh.
Who is he?
Yes, I was going to do that, Chair.
Before we go into
We go into
anything,
the
I must
document.
know who he
Then,
is.
Mr. Mnyandu, could you very briefly tell the Chair who you are, what role you played in this investigation, and your relationship with MNS?
Chair, as already has been stated for the record, my name is Tobani Trevor Mnyandu. I am an attorney and one of the directors at MNS Attorneys. I am the lead attorney in the Department of Construction and Engineering Law. We offer a wide range of services in that area of law, which includes what is referred to as front-end services. From a large perspective, we advise organs of state as to what should go into tender documents, what they should look like. So we advise on the legal framework that is concerned with the preparation of such documents. We also play a huge role in advising organs of state and contractors alike on contract management, one, but more specifically in relation to disputes that arise from construction and engineering contracts, including but not limited to bank guarantees, advance payment bond guarantees, and the like.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you were directly involved in the investigation of this particular aspect, the relocation of the two OEMs?
Yes, I confirm I was directly involved. I led the team that put together the report.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You were still explaining to the Chair the structure of your submission, made up of your presentation and followed by 7 documents as filed under tabs 1 to 7.
Chair, in consultation with the evidence leaders, we put together a presentation that summarizes the context and the conclusions of the report. The exhibits that are marked TTM 1 to TTM 7 are documents that are not necessarily attached to the report, but no new matter arises from them. So it doesn't seek to raise new points, but they expand on the points that are contained in the report.
So then the issues emanating from TTM 1 to 7 are foreshadowed in the report,
Indeed they are, Chair.
except the report doesn't attach the document as an exhibit in respect of each of the points.
Indeed it is so.
Okay. With that explanation, then I think we have the proper context. Could you lead us through your presentation?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just to give you an overview of what the presentation deals with, we've got the contents page at slide number 2. The contents page outlines that we will give you the background in relation to the issue of relocation. Most importantly, we will ask first the question of what is relocation and whether there was a commercial rationale to it. We will then deal with communications that were sent to the OEMs in relation to the issue of relocation, as well as highlight to you at the outset as to what was the attitude of each OEM in respect thereof. We will then deal from the one perspective of the OEM first with the approval process, what communications were had to take the issue of relocation costs, as it were, forward. In particular, we'll deal with a particular memoranda prepared internally at Transnet. We will deal with internal meetings as well as email communications, as I've said, the meetings that were held with the respective OEMs. We'll then highlight to you, Chair, that prior to the approval of the relocation costs, what critical communications were had amongst the negotiation team members within Transnet. We will deal with you, Chair, with the involvement of a structure known as the Transnet Internal Audit, who ought to have played a particular role in the facilitation of the negotiations as well as the conclusion of the approval of the relocation costs. Chair will then take you through the salient findings of an independent expert that was contracted by us pursuant to a prima facie view that we held on the relocation costs. There is a rail logistics company that does work in the space. Finally, Chair, we will conclude by giving you our findings. also explaining what our findings mean for Transnet, considered together with the findings of the independent expert, who by and large, as we found, support the prima facie view that we had. The last bit we will deal with, Chair, relates to the recommendations made to Transnet.
Thank you. You may then start.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just to outline the background again.
Excuse me, Mr. Mnyandu, I apologize. I get a message here that you are not particularly audible. Could you pull the mic closer to you?
I apologize, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Firstly, Chair, just to outline the background that led to Medicine Law and Media attorneys being requested to undertake an investigation on this issue. It arose out of the fact that during July 2015, Transnet approved the relocation costs for both BT, Bombardier Transportation, and China North Rail at amounts of 618 million rand, 457,125 rands, and 647,181 rands, 494 rand, respectively. The issue of relocation, Chair, has been the subject of intense debate, riddled with allegations of corruption that was said to be associated with it. When we undertook the investigations, we therefore set a couple of questions that applied to the investigation. In this slide, we seek to summarize what those questions were. Firstly, Chair, we needed to know what was relocation in itself, what is the meaning of relocating. We then needed to question whether there was indeed relocation in this instance, whether it was envisaged in the business case, because the business case, by and large, Chair, as evidence has been laid now, was the document that gave effect to the line items that would make up the total budget for the 1064 locomotives procurement process. We then needed to interrogate when exactly and by whom the decision to relocate the two OEMs was taken, and whether or not there was any commercial rationale provided for the relocation of the two OEMs. Lastly, we needed to ask ourselves and investigate and come to a conclusion on whether or not the approved relocation costs that we've just referred to were indeed justifiable. Chair, in considering the first question of what is relocation, we decided to consult the Oxford Dictionary. You will see that, Chair, at slide number 5, that we make the point that the Oxford Dictionary considers relocation to be the action of moving to a new place and establishing one's home or business there. Chair, relocation therefore proceeds from the premise that there is a move from one place to another. Following on from this, Chair, you will then get context as to why both in our report as well as in the presentation, the word relocation is in inverted commas. As early as June 2018, when we first interviewed the project engineer of Transnet, that is heading from a Transnet perspective, the manufacturing of the locomotives and certifies acceptance from time to time, we were informed by Mr. Friki Harris that no OEM moved from one place to Durban, and that BT, more clearly, BT and CNR had not set up any jigs, nor had they established site when the request for them to be located in Durban was made. The finding that we made, therefore, arising from this was that there was no relocation. Just to explain what jigs are, those are metal materials that are set up in a manufacturing site of locomotives in order to bend the materials that are there for the manufacturing of the locomotive to a particular degree. Chair, in slide number 6, as has already been canvassed before you this morning, our finding is that the word relocation is a misnomer insofar as it is mentioned in the context of the 1064 locomotives transaction. Put differently, and to reiterate the point, we found that there was no relocation of either BT, nor was there relocation of CNR. The noteworthy point to be made at this point, Chair, is that whilst there wasn't a relocation per se of any OEM, there was a decision communicated to the OEMs for them to be located at a place different to the one that they had initially thought they would be when they put in their tender submissions. But, Chair, as you will see going forward, we have found that all communications were had in this regard prior to the conclusion of the contract. As we take you through the presentation, we will deal with the respective communications, or rather the communications with the respective OEMs.
Okay.
Chair, the question that arose from what I've just explained when the decision was taken to change the location of the two OEMs is whether there was a commercial rationale linked to that decision. And Chair, the issue is covered in a report commissioned by PwC, who were instructed by Transnet between January and February 2014 to conduct an assessment of whether, first of all, Transnet Engineering, an operating division of Transnet, was going to be able to deliver on the 1064 locomotive program, one, and two, to advise, amongst other things, as to whether or not there were available facilities to house each of the OEMs. Chair, you will recall that initially when the tender was issued, it was issued for the manufacturing of electric locomotives as well as diesel locomotives on the one side. The view at that point was that there were going to be two OEMs. The PwC report, Chair, is to be found at volume 12, page 8927. But what we've tried to do in this slide is to summarize the findings of PwC. Just to get back again to the issue of the decision to award to 4 different OEMs as opposed to 2. That brought about the question as to whether or not the facility that is known as Correspondence in Pretoria would be able to house more than 2 OEMs.
Please proceed.
Going ahead, Chair, PwC made the finding that unfortunately, Correspondence would not be able to house more than 2 OEMs, as there would arise issues related to intellectual property in relation to the electric locomotives being manufactured by 2 OEMs, as well as those being manufactured by the diesel OEMs. As a result, and based on a study done by PwC of the facilities of Transnet around the country, they put in an alternative suggestion that the other 2 OEMs could either be located in Uitenhage, in the Eastern Cape, where Transnet Engineering has got facilities, or Durban, in a place known as Bayhead. The decision that was made had pros and cons to it, was that the location would rather be Durban. Just to point out at this point, Chair, that the decision and the communication in this regard was made prior to the signature of the contract and during the negotiations with the 4 OEMs.
And by reference to the contract, you mean the main contract?
Yes, when
The allocation, the award?
when I refer
the
to
tender.
the contracts, I'm referring to the main contracts being the locomotive supply agreements concluded with the 4 OEMs.
Okay.
Chair, we then move on to the next slide to summarize what was the critical advice that was given to Transnet by PwC once they had made the recommendations. PwC advised that Transnet should request the OEMs to justify costs incurred as a result of the relocation and to seek alternative assembly locations where additional costs would not be incurred. We make the point in this slide that we have found that the advice given by PwC above was not carried through either in the negotiations, nor was it contained in the proposals by the OEMs for the relocation costs. Chair, we also make the point in this slide that in the locomotive supply agreements that were concluded with the 2 OEMs being BT and CNR, the concept of relocation nor the cost plays any role, nor is it mentioned in those agreements.
So on that point, as at the point of conclusion of the locomotive supply agreement, we can deduce that it was not contemplated by the parties that any of the OEMs would have to relocate and therefore incur costs as a consequence thereof. If one, on the strict reading of the agreement.
On the strict reading of the locomotive supply agreements,
Yes.
yes, it is so.
Now, after the conclusion of the agreements in March 2014, is there any document signed by both parties that open up the issue of relocation and start a negotiation process in respect thereof? And if there is such a document, does that document indicate in terms of which clause in the contract such a negotiation is being undertaken?
At this point, I'd like to take the chair to TTM1, which is on page 38 of the bundle before the chair this morning.
Yes?
This is email correspondence sent to one of the OEMs and prior to the conclusion of the locomotive supply agreements. It is sent by a supply chain services personnel at Transnet Freight Rail who played the role of being the interface, one, in the negotiations of the locomotive supply agreements, as well as being the interface, as we will see later, in relation to the negotiation for the relocation costs.
Yes.
Chair, as evidence has already been laid, the locomotive supply agreements were concluded on 17 March 2014. The email before you, Chair, at TTM1 on page 38 is addressed by Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe to Mr. Aubrey Lekwane, as well as a David Anglin, who are from Bombardier Transportation. I would like to read into the record if the chair will allow.
Yeah.
The subject of the email reads as follows: a revised proposal. The date of the email is 6 March 2014. Dear tenderer, you are requested to submit your revised proposal, which include the latest TE scope of work by no later than 1400 hours tomorrow, 7 March 2014. Price impact for Durban must be submitted on Monday at 10 a.m. TFR also requested that you share your subcontractors' prices as per your discussion yesterday. Kindly be on standby for tomorrow. Time will be communicated in the morning. Full stop.
Okay.
Chair,
So that's an invitation from Transnet?
Yes.
Yes.
This demonstrates that there was an invitation from Transnet in writing to the one OEM to give a price indication and factor in what it would cost the particular OEM to be located and manufacture from Durban. We have not been able to discover a direct response to this, but from the communications that follow, as well as the locomotive supply agreements, it would seem that the particular OEM chose not to put in a price proposal, so far as our investigations are concerned. And therefore, the agreement was concluded on the basis that the particular OEM would be located elsewhere. Chair, it is relevant at this point to take you to Appendix 2 of our report, which is to be found at volume 12, pages 8830.
Chair, if I may, I omitted to point out Mr. Mnyandu's testimony will rely only on 12 and 13, so the Chair could have 13 at the ready. The rest are not applicable. Thank you, Chair. Could you repeat that page number again, Mr. Mnyandu?
It is 8830 for the
Yes.
Chair.
.8830 is the cover sheet. The actual document starts at 331.
8831. Apologies.
Yes.
What the Chair will see at page 8831 is that this is an internal memorandum at Transnet addressed to Mr. Brian Molefe, the Group Chief Executive at the time. The subject reads, the award of the TFR 1064 locomotives tender to original equipment manufacturers and the associated subcontracts with Transnet. Below that, Chair, you will see it is dated 16 May 2014, which is some 2 months after the conclusion of the locomotive supply agreements.
Sorry, Mr. Mnyan, to be precise, it's with Transnet Engineering, which, as you explained, is a division within Transnet.
Yes.
That's what it reads.
Transnet Engineering.
Yes.
The memo is from a Mr. Richard Valiu, his title at the time being Chief Executive of the Operating Division, Transnet Engineering. Chair, if you turn to page 8832, the purpose of the memo is summarized as to request the Transnet Group Chief Executive to formally communicate the allocation of Bombardier Transportation and CNR to Transnet's Engineering Durban facility.
Yes.
Chair, perhaps we can turn to 8833 so as not to detain ourselves with the memorandum and deal with the ambit we seek to draw your attention to in this. At paragraph 5 at 8833, it reads as follows. The decision to allocate CSR Juju Electric Locomotive Company and GE, just to point out, CSR Juju is the CSR, being the locomotive manufacturer that was awarded 359 locomotives, to the Kurusport facility was based on the fact that subcontracts with these OEMs already exist and that the facility currently hosts production lines for locomotives designed by them. Chair, you will recall that evidence has been laid by Mr. Sedumedi that prior to the conclusion of the 1064 locomotives program, there had been a transaction for the acquisition of 95 locomotives, which are electric locomotives that were manufactured at Kurusport by CSR, and 43 diesel locomotives that were being manufactured by GE. It is in respect of those locomotives that paragraph 5 is based.
And sorry, the 43 by GE were also manufactured in Kurusport.
Indeed.
Yes.
Chair, we then take you to paragraph 6, which reads, CNR Rolling Stock South Africa, which is the CNR consortium once it had been incorporated, have indicated their acceptance of their allocation to the Durban facility through their actions, which will promptly take you to, Chair, and planning around the use of the Durban facility. Bombardier Transportation has, however, expressed their requirement for an official communication informing them that their factory site will be Durban. Section 1.1.33 of the subcontract, this relates to the subcontract agreement concluded between Transnet Engineering on the one end as well as Bombardier. It reads as follows. Facilities shall mean the rolling stock assembly and engineering facilities of the subcontractor situated in Kurusport or any other location of the subcontractor as may be agreed upon by the parties. Until such time as the communication has been received, Bombardier Transportation insists that the contractual agreement is Kurusport. Chair, in relation to what happened pursuant to this communication,
Before we get there, so our understanding of section 1.1.33 or clause 1.1.33 of the subcontract, we must understand that the parties contracted on the basis that the production may be in Kurusport or any place in South Africa.
yes.
And it's on that basis that they contracted and they accepted that term.
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you.
And why was Bombardier Transportation saying until such time as the communication has been received? Bombardier Transportation insists that the contractual agreement is Kurusport. Well, was there already an arrangement in terms of which Kurusport had been agreed with them as the site?
Chair, in relation to the main agreement, the locomotive supply agreement, the facility for engineering or the manufacturing of the locomotives is noted as Correspondence.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
And if I may just follow on that question, at paragraph 5 of that memorandum, page 8833, it states that the decision to allocate both CSR and GE was the reasons,
Yes.
or it advances the reasons.
Yes.
At the time that decision was made, is there a record of a firm decision to relocate or allocate Bombardier and CNR to Durban?
In our finding, there had been a firm decision based on the findings of the PwC report, as well as now with particular reference to the correspondence that we've taken the chair to at TTM 1.
Okay. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, would now like to take you to volume 12, the same volume, at page 8837. Chair, we can make it 8838 because 8837 is the covering page.
Yes.
This is correspondence on the letterhead of Bombardier Transportation. It is addressed to Transnet Freight Rail on 6 June 2014. The subject reads, allocation of Bombardier Transportation to the Transnet Engineering Durban facility, letter of Mr. Brian Molefe to Dr. Lutz Bertling dated 21 May 2014.
Yes.
Dear Mr. Gianni, further to our informal discussions, Bombardier has now received the letter above mentioned from your Group Chief Executive, Mr. Brian Molefe, via our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Lutz Bertling, on 26 May 2014. Mr. Molefe officially informed us that Transnet Engineering's Durban facility should host our operations and asked Bombardier Transportation to agree. A response letter was provided by Dr. Bertling on 5 June 2014, confirming that our project team would contact TFR directly to confirm the next step. Chair, what we seek to do with this correspondence, from the perspective of the OEM being Bombardier, is that communication then was had, and there was confirmation that it was accepted that it would be located at Durban. That is what we seek the Chair to note from this. In relation to timeline, Chair, and insofar as our slide number 9 is concerned, would now like to take you through the attitude of CNR Consortium.
And before we do so, just with reference to the appendices you just referred us to,
Yes.
what is your interpretation of the agreements that's signed by Bombardier and CNR? Would it, if one were to conclude that it was not open to any of the OEMs to insist on operating from Correspondence, would that be a proper interpretation of that agreement?
Yes, that would be a proper interpretation of that agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, at slide number 9, would now like to take you through the attitude of CNR Consortium insofar as it concerns the decision, we should say, to locate, or rather be located in the Durban facility of Transnet Engineering. TTM 2, which is to be found at page 39 before the bundle that is with Chair this morning, is a letter from the CNR Consortium. The letter is dated 10 March. We make the point at this point, Chair, that it is exactly a week prior to the conclusion of the locomotive supply agreement. It is addressed to, Chair. It is addressed to Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe, who at the time was a commodity manager in the supply chain services unit of Transnet Freight Rail. We have already explained the particular role that she was playing in relation to the negotiations. In fact, we have already demonstrated it through the correspondence that she had sent to Bombardier on the 9th of March 2014. It says, Chair, Dear Lindiwe, with reference to the TFR request relating to the CNR response for the cost impact of building the locomotives in Durban, we would like to point out that our original quotation is based upon building the locomotives in Kurusport or Germiston. We understand from TE, which is meant to denote Transnet Engineering, that the Kurusport facility has already been allocated, but CNR would like to request that before a final decision is made regarding this matter, that we are granted site visits for both Durban and Germiston. As regards the request for the cost impact of this decision, CNR would like to point out that our preliminary studies show that the cost of building the locomotives in Durban will be higher than the cost of building the locomotives in Germiston.
Yes.
Chair, if you turn overleaf, it is then from CNR, dated the 11th of March, the impact of manufacturing in Durban versus Johannesburg. What we have tried to do in slide number 9 and the 2 slides that follow is to summarize and be able to take you through the particular quotation, as we see it, received by Transnet from CNR.
Yes.
The Chair will note that on the extreme left, those are topics which relate to the manufacturing. Chair, we are to understand this as the capital, it is to denote the capital expenditure that would be incurred if CNR were to be located in Durban. We will make some examples for you, Chair, in relation to what would cost less and what would be a saving as a result of CNR being located in Durban. The first item is an engine per locomotive. On the third column, it reads that there would be an extra cost of 8,000 Rand. There is a comment that is put in there in order to substantiate, as we see it, why there would be the extra cost. The comment reads, engine imported but testing done in Johannesburg. That is to be understood, Chair, saying whilst the engines would be imported for each locomotive from China or anywhere else that they would be procuring from and get to the Durban harbour, there would be an extra cost for the engines to be tested. We then seek to, on the other hand, draw your attention to what was going to be a saving.
Before we get to that point,
Yes, Chair.
if I understand you correctly, the extra cost, now the engine is imported,
Yes,
fully assembled from China.
yes,
It arrives at Durban Harbour,
yes, Chair.
and if manufacturing of the locomotives is undertaken at Kurusport, that engine would then have to be transported to Johannesburg.
That is correct, Chair.
And it is at Johannesburg that it will be tested.
That is correct, Chair.
So that cost was going to be incurred in the first place. Why is it listed here as an extra cost? Is that intended to cover the cost of returning the engine back to Durban for manufacture of the locomotive?
Chair, unfortunately, the quotation itself is not substantiated,
Okay.
but it can only follow that the extra cost to be incurred is to take it back to the Durban Bayhead site for it to be fitted on the locomotive.
Otherwise, the cost of transporting it from the harbour to Johannesburg was already included in the original quote on the basis of which the parties contracted.
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, to take you then to a line item that denoted in this quotation what would be a saving for Transnet. We use again an item that has a similar amount of 8,000 Rand. It's in relation to wheels and axles.
That would be 7th entry, I think.
The 8th.
8th entry on the left column, yes?
Chair, the saving that was denoted there was an amount of 8,000 Rand. The comment that you will see on the far right-hand side
I'm
is...
sorry, there are two 8,000 Rands entries there under savings. Which one are you dealing with?
wheels and axles.
Which would be the second one,
Oh,
Chair.
okay, the
Yes.
second one.
Yes,
Okay.
Chair.
Thank you.
The comment on the far right-hand side reads imported components. The understanding is that the wheels and axles would therefore be imported to the Durban harbour. There wouldn't be a cost to bring them up to Johannesburg and return them, and therefore there would be a cost saving of 8,000 rand for Transnet.
Please explain that again, Mr. Mnyandu.
In respect of wheels and axles, an amount of 8,000 rand would not be incurred, and it would be a saving for Transnet in that the wheels and the axles,
Okay.
which are parts of the locomotive, would be imported to Durban, taken from Durban to the site
Okay.
for
What
manufacturing.
is the significance of the two amounts being exactly the same in regard to the engine and the wheels and axles?
Chair, there isn't. I thought it would be easier to find on the slide, and that's why I referred you to the 8,000.
Well, is it not an indication that it relates to transportation? Because the transportation from Durban to Joburg would probably cost the same. I don't know whether that's petrol and whatever else, because otherwise it's very interesting that it should be exactly the same amount. If you are going to use the same,
Analogy.
if it's transportation, so you talk about petrol, you talk about whatever else, then one could understand if it's exactly the same amount. Otherwise, it's difficult to understand why there should be this coincidence that it's the same amounts.
Chair, your conclusion is a logical one to follow from what is in the document. Yes.
Okay.
And
thank
on that
you.
basis, we may assume then, seeing as it's a saving, that transport cost of the wheels and the axles would have formed part of the original quotation.
That is to be understood from the quotation.
And it's a saving because now they no longer have to be transported to Johannesburg when they get to the Durban Harbour.
Indeed, it is so, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, we then take you to slide number 10 to deal with the next section of the quotation that starts at page 40.
So, sorry, before you do so, there seems to be a fixed amount, a total cost for the relocation at the bottom of 9,
Yes,
and that is 4 million.
4 million.
So we are informed by CNR that with these adjustments, add some, deduct others, the cost will be 4 million.
Indeed, it is so, Chair.
Okay, then we go overleaf.
Then we go overleaf.
Yes?
Overleaf, it is the second part of,
I'm sorry.
yes, Chair.
Is that 4 million the total of all the other items under extra cost? Is that a total of all the, or not? Or is it a separate, is it an
Chair,
extra
the-
cost on its own, not totaling?
Chair, it totals all of the extra costs that are to be found in the column in which it appears. So it is a sum made up of,
No, it can't be. My arithmetic is not so
Chair,
good, but
for the
that's
purpose,
4 million. The highest of those amounts is 40,000 rand. The next highest is 20,000 rand. All the others are too small to make up 4 million.
Chair, for the purposes of, this is a cost, an extra cost per
Per
locomotive.
locomotive.
For the purposes of our presentation,
The 4 million, the one you say is an extra cost per locomotive,
it's supposed to be the total for all locomotives.
for all locomotives.
For all locomotives.
So it's not a total of adding up the amounts that are above the 4 million in that column.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, no,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
But you
No,
can,
no,
you can accept,
then
Chair,
I
even though,
understand.
you can accept, Chair, even though nothing turns on it,
Yes.
that on any score, the
Yeah.
amount that is the total there
Yeah.
is incorrect.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It is a little under 5 million rand on our calculations.
Okay,
Yes, Chair.
okay.
In the next part of the presentation, and at slide 10, we deal with the next part of the quotation. And this relates to the subject of the imported locomotive. What we are to understand from this is that there would be a savings of imported locomotives. The number in brackets is the number of locomotives that would be imported. And the saving is denoted as 1 million rand for locomotives that would be fully assembled and shipped to the Durban Harbour.
Yes?
What we are to,
I'm sorry, please let's go back.
yes,
The
Chair.
number in brackets represents what?
The number of locomotives that would be fully assembled in China and transported by ship to Durban.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
So the savings of 1 million rand is in relation to 20 locomotives that would not be transported to Johannesburg.
And in this instance, the 1 million rand saving is not per locomotive, it's a total saving on
And
the
the-
20.
Indeed, it is so, Chair.
Okay.
The next line item deals with savings on kits, and 15 of them. Chair, before we take you through the amount, we'd just like to explain what kits are. It relates to the bogie, which is a part of the locomotive, the underframe, and some body panels that would be imported from Dalian. Just to give context to the conversation from that perspective, 15 locomotives were going to be produced by CNR as semi-knockdown kits. That is to say, some of it is manufactured in China, and then some of it, the parts are imported to South Africa, and then full assembly happens in South Africa. The amount that was denoted as a saving there was 285,000 rand. Again, we understand on the basis that the 15 kits would then not need to travel to inland. Chair, you will see in the next column, below that is the total saving from that perspective, and it amounts to 1,285,000 rand.
Yes.
And therefore, the last column, it says the total extra cost is 2.79 million rand. It's 2,792,900 rand for the chair.
Arithmetically, does that add up?
Arithmetically, that does not add up.
Okay.
Chair, the final part of the quotation received from CNR during March 2014 is made up of costs related to flights and accommodation, referred to as F&A costs. The quotation proceeds from the basis that there would be a minimum of 4 people to fly to Durban every week from Johannesburg.
Yes.
That cost is denoted as an amount of 1,320,000 rand. And the next line item is in relation to the accommodation. From the reading of the quotation, we are made to understand that it would be the accommodation for the 4 people flying to Durban. That amount is put down as 960,000 rand. There is no indication as to what the flights would be. There is no indication as to where the amounts are quoted from.
And before you leave that point, going back to Mr. Harris's conclusion that neither Bombardier nor CNR had a base in Johannesburg, presumably there was no personnel as well.
Yes, Chair.
And your conclusion that as a fact, therefore, it could not have relocated from Johannesburg to get to Durban or to be placed in Durban.
Yes, Chair.
Do you have an indication of who these 4 people are that fly from Johannesburg every week and why they must fly from Johannesburg to Durban every week?
No, we do not, Chair.
Is there any documentation that you have seen where Transnet interrogates both the figures and the basis for the figures in this regard?
No, there is not such a document, Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair, the extra F&A costs denoted on the slide, that's for flights and accommodation, is simply adding the 2 amounts. It is 2,280,000 rand. Chair, the last item that was dealt with in respect of the quotation was for new office set up for 60 personnel. And that amount was 604,800 rand. The last point to be made is that the total extra cost as indicated in the 10 March 2014 quotation received from CNR was that it was going to cost 9,755,600 rand for it to be located in Durban.
And that is made up of the 4 million, your slide 9,
Yes, Chair.
plus the 2.7 million at slide 7, which are savings or extra costs in relation to imported locomotive, and what they denote as flight and accommodation costs and offices for new personnel. All that taken together will give a total of 9.7 million, according to this document.
Yes, Chair, together with the total extra transport costs.
Yes.
That is correct.
Yes, thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we now seek to take you through the approval process of the costs for relocation.
Yes.
That's 9.7 million total extra costs. Is that the amount that was arrived at by Mr.
Gonzalez? Yes, Chair.
Mr. Gonzalez? He's the one who...
It's Mr. Gonzalez who's testified on behalf of the minority shareholder in the CNR consortium.
Yes, that's the amount that he was talking about.
That's the amount he was talking about.
Okay, all right. But based on what you have said, even that amount, there are certain things that are not explained. Is that right?
Indeed, that is so, Chair.
So that maybe not, the true costs might have been lower.
Indeed it is so, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mnyandu, you may proceed.
Chair, at slide number 12, we now seek to take you through the approval process in relation to the cost of relocation. We first seek to highlight some salient points in relation to CNR and then deal with PT before we get to the actual approval of the costs. Pursuant to the receipt by Transnet of the quotation of 9.7 million rand by CNR, we have found that there were no further engagements during the year 2014 until February 2015, during which a proposal was submitted by CNR, which estimates the cost inside the text of the report to be approximately 100 million rand for relocation. However, in the same document, Chair, it also reflects at the end of it an estimate of 318 million rand. Chair, that is to be found at volume 12, page 9013.
Yes.
We have no record, and we have not seen such a record in our investigation, of the quotation having been interrogated, having been responded to by Transnet. But we gather from the further correspondences that there were that such a quotation was not accepted. Chair, a previous witness, Mr. Gonzalez, has already laid evidence about an agreement that we speak about at slide number 12.
Before we get to that, I have turned to your page, the document at 9013, volume 12, your Appendix 7, and in particular, I am at page 9017.
Yes, Chair.
And under item 4, potential cost increased.
Yes, Chair.
Understanding sequence of events, Transnet was provided with a 9 million odd increase to the cost, 9 million odd cost for relocation to Durban.
Yes, Chair.
So we are somewhere in the ballpark of 10 million.
Yes, Chair.
Subsequently, and in February 2015, Transnet is then served with this document. And at item 4, it states it is estimated that it will get the cost increased, that is the relocation.
Yes, Chair.
The cost will be more than 100 million, such as the following fields: transportation cost increase, human staff cost increase, technical cost increased.
Yes, Chair.
That's a 90 million rand difference between this amount and the previously quoted quotation of 10 million.
Yes, it is, Chair, in a space of 11 months.
Were you able to get any understanding on how this came about and the justification for this jump?
No, we were not, Chair.
Did you make inquiries?
We tried making inquiries through the documentation itself,
Okay.
but however, the proposals gives no indication.
Does this document make reference to the previous 9 million rand quotation?
No, it does not, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. You may proceed.
During April 2015, Chair, we discovered an agreement, which as already has been highlighted to the Chair, was dealt with by Mr. Gonzalez, who is a minority shareholder and a director of the CNR consortium. The agreement was concluded between CNR and BEX Business Expansion Structured, a company that was going to assist CNR with the benchmarking of its relocation costs. It's an agreement, as I say, Chair, that is to be found at volume 12, page 9022, in consultation with the evidence leaders. To the extent that evidence has already been laid on it, we shall not cover it, save to confirm to the Chair that the copy of the agreement was obtained from Transnet, and it is the exact agreement that is on record in the evidence bundles of the Commission.
And again, the very document that said the cost will be in excess of 100 million, in fact, gave a new cost of 318 million.
Yes, that is correct, Chair.
So the leap is actually from 9 million to 318 million in 11 months.
Indeed, it is so, Chair.
Thank you. You may proceed. You are dealing with the BEX agreement.
Yes. Chair, whilst we do not deal extensively with the BEX agreement, rather the agreement between CNR and BEX, we do point out that BEX were entitled to earn the difference between 580 million and 647 million rand. On our calculation, that works out to 67 million rand for computing the costs.
Yes.
Whilst we cannot confirm the date on which payment was made, Chair, we have seen an invoice, number one, and the attorneys for CNR have confirmed that payment was indeed made. Chair, this is to be found at page 9035 of your volume 12 bundle.
Yes.
Take the chair.
Is it necessary to go there?
Well, doesn't the slide say 9?
It's Appendix 9.
Oh, okay, on volume 12.
Volume 12.
Oh, okay, yes.
And
Do we need to go there to that page?
Mr. Mnyandu, let me just check with you. That is the same invoice that Mr. Gonzalez led evidence on.
Yes, it is so, Chair.
You have seen the invoice already, Chair?
Yeah, no,
Yes.
that's fine.
So we may proceed on that basis. We are familiar with the invoice.
Chair, there is a particular paragraph that would like to take the Chair
Oh,
through,
that-
Yes, please do so.
That-
which
being the case,
assists, or rather assisted us in forming a prima facie view in relation to
At 9036.
at 9036, once the Chair is there,
Yes.
Chair will note it is a letter, on the letterhead of Hogan Lovells, attorneys.
Yes.
The subject reads, "A reportable irregularity, CRRC rolling stock, our client." The Chair will note it is addressed to KPMG, and the context to it is that there had been the reporting of an accounting irregularity in relation to the payment of 67 million rand to BEX, which KPMG had found. The Chair will see this summarized at paragraph 1.3 as follows. We understand that at this time, and on the basis of the information provided to you, you are of the view that the proposal and the agreement contain alleged irregularities for the following reasons. One, the proposal significantly misrepresented to Transnet the cost of relocation of a manufacturing facility from Pretoria to Durban, and 2, a payment made by our client to BEX appears to, in inverted commas, lack sound commercial substance and purpose.
Yes.
Chair, without detaining you, we would like to take you to paragraph 2.1.
I'm sorry, is this the part you were relying on to say the attorneys have confirmed payment?
Yes, Chair.
This is the part you were
Yes.
relying on?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, would now like to take you to paragraph 2.1 at page 9039.
39 or 37, Mr. Mnyande?
Paragraph 2.21.
Or 21, I thought 2.1. Yes,
Apologies.
2.21 is at 9039.
Yes.
Yes?
Chair, at this point, the letter has already set out the background in relation to CNR, now known as CRRC Rolling Stock, and BEX, and how they came about to form the relationship. This deals with the perspective of CNR in relation to the relocation costs. Briefly, paragraph 2.21 reads, our client was of the view at the time that Transnet would not agree to a project cost of 580 million rand, and that the final project cost might be lower than this. Based on our client's prior business, that our client believed that Transnet would require a discount on this amount, thus our client believed that the final project cost would be closer to 580 million rand. Hence, they believed there was very little risk for them in agreeing to an upside fee arrangement with BEX. It is just that note we needed to take the chair.
Before you leave that note, this letter is from the attorneys,
Yes,
and it is advancing CNR consortium position,
Yes, Chair.
where it seeks to justify the conclusion of the agreement for services with BEX.
Yes, Chair.
And at paragraph 2.21 that you've just referred us to at page 9093, the letter informs us that, in truth, CNR believed, presumably on a basis of some calculation, that the actual cost of relocation would be 580.
Yes, Chair.
But we know that's not what CNR claimed as the relocation cost.
Indeed.
And they did this knowing that the actual cost is 580, if it is the actual cost.
Indeed, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. At slide number 13,
Yes?
we make the point, as made in our report, that the agreement was based on a risk-sharing model, which we've already dealt with, that we note to be very suspicious.
Yes.
For the reasons already outlined to the Chair. Furthermore, we would like to point out that the agreement is also suspicious based on the fact that the Chair will recall that evidence was led by Mr. Sedumedi that CNR as a consortium had placed in or submitted a bid or proposal for the manufacturing of both electric as well as diesel locomotives. Chair, from our perspective, it is therefore unfathomable that there would be an OEM that would require the assistance of a third party in order to compute the price difference of it being located in one place as opposed to the other.
And in bidding for both diesel and electric, effectively they bid for 1064 locomotives.
Indeed, it is so, Chair.
Yes.
We then move on to the next slide.
Yes.
Chair, on 19 May 2015, there is a memorandum that is prepared by Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe, in which she sought approval from the then acting Group Chief Executive, Mr. Siyabonga Gama, for the negotiation of the terms of the relocation with CNR.
Yes.
Whilst the memorandum notes that a separate submission is to be made or has been prepared for BT, we have not discovered such a memorandum. But from the processes that ensued arising from this memorandum, we are indeed able to confirm that BT was communicated with to the same effect. Chair, we seek to take you through the genesis or the purpose of the memorandum.
Okay.
The purpose of the memo was to seek approval for the following. One, for the team to negotiate the commercial terms of relocation.
I'm sorry, the memorandum is at what page?
Chair, it is to be found at volume 13 at page 9110.
The actual document starting at 9111.
I think the appearance of appendix before the volume
It's confusing a
is
bit.
confusing me because
Yes.
I'm used to these bundles starting with a volume.
Indeed, Chair.
So I take time to kind of miss them.
We shall amend, Chair, your copy and remove references to appendix and
appendix,
just
yeah.
give direct reference to the volume and the page number.
I mean, I appreciate that having appendix 10 might be helpful, but
It perhaps may come at the end of
maybe it can come at the end.
not at the
yeah,
beginning.
Yeah. I'll find this page just now.
9111, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, we summarize, as I've said, that the purpose of the memo was to seek approval for the team to negotiate the relocation to Durban with CNR. The background speaks to the issues that we've already covered and needs not to be covered for you, Chair.
Mr. Mnyandu, please pull the mic again, swing it towards you. Yes.
Apologies, Chair.
Thank you.
If we go to paragraph 6 under background, Chair, it says a team will be...
I'm sorry, before you go to paragraph 6, at some stage it would help if you could just tell me where do we find the first use of this term relocation and by whom, if your investigation helped you to establish that. So, but it doesn't have to be now, later.
All right, Chair.
But if you were not able to discover that, you'll just let me know.
All right, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, if we go to the purpose, it is A, the team, to seek approval for the team to negotiate the relocation to Durban with CNR. B, seek approval for a variation order to finalize the relocation of the program of the construction of 233 Class 45D locomotives to Durban to a maximum value of 669 million rand, 784,286 rand. Separate submission has been prepared for BT. We know that there is a typo at B, insofar as it refers to 233 locomotives, it ought to be 232.
Okay.
C, it is also to seek approval for a letter to be issued to CNR to commence negotiation for this relocation of the program.
Okay.
For these purposes, Chair, we just like to draw your attention to the cap of 669 million rand that is requested. We found it odd that a Transnet official internally would request for a cap at 669 million rand. Upon investigating the issue, the amount resembles exactly what is to be found at page 42, but the Chair need not go there now, at page 42 of the exhibit bundle that is before the Chair. So it was the latest proposal that had been received from CNR. Even though it is dated June 2015, it coincides, as I say, the amount coincides with the memo done by Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe. If we go to the bottom
Before you leave that point, you say the 669 million odd emanates from a proposal by CNR.
Indeed, Chair,
And you referred the Chair to the document, and you say it's not necessarily ready to go there at the moment.
at the moment.
And you say that document is dated June 2015.
Indeed, Chair.
Please refer to page 9115 of the memo to Mr. Gama.
Maybe before that, this amount of 669,784,286 that is dealt with under purpose. Does it look like somebody for Transnet may have received the proposal from CNR and has just taken that amount as is and said to Gama, that's what we should talk about?
Indeed, it looks like that, Chair.
Yes, without any discussion from what you could find.
It seems there was indeed no interrogation of the amount.
Yes.
It is a request to approve that amount as the ceiling
Yes.
for the negotiations.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you.
And then please go to 9115. And following on the question that the chair has just posed, that that number appears to be uplifted directly from CNR proposal into this memorandum. You testified that that proposal is dated June 2015.
Indeed, Chair.
But this memorandum is dated 19 May 2015.
Indeed, Chair.
So the number was known somewhere, somehow, to somebody within Transnet before the actual proposal was received.
Indeed, Chair.
Do you know how that came to be, or is that asking too much?
During the course of our investigations, we were not able to determine.
Thank you.
But it is to be noted, Chair, that the particular memorandum actually contains 2 signature pages. Because if the Chair goes to 9114,
Yes.
it is where the amount at the top at recommendation of 669 is to be found. But on the page at which Mr. Gama signs the memorandum, the amount is denoted as 635,851,786 rand.
Okay.
Even that amount comes from a particular proposal submitted on behalf of CNR.
Is that,
So, the page 9114 and page 9115, are these pages 2 pages of different documents? Or I see they both say recommendation at the top and then say compiled by. They don't. They're compiled by Lindu and Ledger, both of them. But the signature on top of Lindu and Ledger's name, the signatures are different on the 2 documents. And or does it look like it's one person who signed for Lindu and Ledger, Navi Naya, and
Chair,
P.S. Selinga? What was happening?
We are sorry to disturb, just to confirm.
Yes.
The reading that you see on the signature lines of Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe, Mr. Ravi Naya, as well as Mr. Selinga, say C attached.
They are not signatures.
Indeed, Chair.
Okay.
The signatures are on the next page.
But then Mr. Anuj Singh's signature is there and Mr. Gama's signature is there on page 9114, and they are repeated at page 9115. What is the meaning of this?
Chair, we were not able to determine. Ms.
Yes.
Lindiwe Mdletshe herself, when interviewed, could not explain as to why there were 2 signature pages.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the most senior of all these people. Well, it was Mr. Gama, as at this time he was acting group chief executive.
Indeed, Chair, and the approval was sought from him.
And to the extent that he signed 2 pages that contain the same thing in terms of the recommendation, except for the figure. At 9114, it's one amount. At 9115, it's a different amount. He approved two different amounts for the same thing. Is that right?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay.
The understanding, as we understood it from our interviews, was that the one that was actually approved is the later proposal, which is the one, as I say, dated June 2015, and it contains the amount of 669 million rand.
And how did the other one come about? You don't know.
It was earlier. It had been submitted earlier by CNR.
But this document that we are looking at, which has got these two pages, 9114 and 9115.
I apologize, Chair.
Yeah.
Perhaps we should have pointed out. If you look at the page 9114,
Yes,
it's signed during the month of June,
yes,
2015, 9 June.
Yes.
So it is
Yes.
approved by Mr. Gama based on the later proposal received
yes,
in June.
yes.
Yes, Chair.
And then then 9115, there is no date appearing next to Mr. Gama's signature to indicate when he signed it. But Silinga, I don't know if it's Miss or Mr. Ndipiwe Silinga, he or she signed on 19 May 2015. And Miss Lindy Wemdleja signed on the same day. Anuj Singh, Mr.
There is
Anuj
no
Singh,
date.
it looks like, is it 19?
It looks like 19
It's all the same.
May 2015, Chair.
2015. So the document, Mr. Gama's approval on page 9114 is later than the approvals on 9115.
Indeed, Chair.
So, but then only he approved that on that page, and Mr. Singh.
Yes, Chair.
On 9114, to the extent that their signatures are good enough for the approval, that would be the amount that must be seen as having been approved.
Indeed, Chair.
And replacing this other one at page 9115.
Indeed, Chair.
I see that somebody wrote at 9115 that I think maybe Mr. Gama needs clarity on certain things. So maybe that's why there's the one on page 9114, because he needed to have some clarity, but I wonder why he signed before getting the clarity.
Indeed, Chair, it's a mystery.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm still trying to reconcile 9114 with 9115. If one looks at 9114, it's seeking approval for amount of 669 million.
Yes, Chair.
It says compiled by and typed Lindiwe Mdleche. On
Yes,
the
Chair.
signature line, it's not a signature, it's written C attached.
C attached.
For Mr. Is it Ravi Nair,
Ravi Nair.
the same thing applies, it says C attached.
Indeed, Chair.
So does Mr. Silinga say, Mr. Anuj Singh signs on what appears to be 28th May 2015, and Mr. Gama signs on the 9th of June 2015.
Yes, Chair.
What is the attached that we are being referred to?
Again, through our interviews, we discovered that what is attached is, what is denoted by the C attached, my recommendation of the memorandum has already been signed for, C attached.
Okay. Now, would the C attached be what appears at 9115?
Indeed, it is so, Chair.
So 9115 would appear to be the last page of a memorandum,
Indeed, Chair.
if we were to follow the structure of Appendix 10.
Indeed, Chair.
And yes, Ms. Lindiwe Mdleche signed there on the 19th of May 2015. Except when I look at the recommendation, it is now for 635 million.
Yes, indeed, Chair.
So would my logic be correct if I say page 9115 is the final page of another memo and not Appendix 10? There is another memo that argued for approval of 635 million.
Chair, on the basis that the front of Appendix 10,
Precisely because that front speaks of 669.
yes,
So there must be another memo that speaks of 635,
yes, Chair.
which is not annexed here or attached, but only the signed recommendation
Recommendation.
page is annexed.
Yes, it is so, Chair.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I have followed your exchange, but let me ask this. It seems it would seem illogical or maybe illogical is not the right word, but maybe it would be strange if the C attached at 9114 was made with the intention of referring to 9115, because C attached above Ms. Mdleje's signature line and Mr. Nayer's signature line, from what you said earlier on, in that event could only mean I have already signed.
Indeed, that is what is to be understood, Chair.
Yes, but the problem with that understanding of C attached is the 2 pages could not have both been meant to be used.
Principally, Chair, because they refer to different numbers.
Amounts, yes.
That
Yes.
there is a request for approval on.
Yes.
Yes.
So that is the one problem with that understanding. The other problem is is that it would be so easy to just sign there, unless the idea was that Ms. Mdleje and Mr. Nayer were not available. I don't know. But it just makes it very difficult to understand precisely what was being recommended by who and what was being approved by Mr. Gama.
Even more so, Chair, when one considers that the signature lines with C attached are above the names of the personnel at Transnet that would take the memorandum to Mr. Siyabonga Gama.
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
As I say, during the course of our investigations and interviews, there was no direct answer in relation to why this memorandum was done in this manner.
But when you found this document, did you find it with these 2 pages as part of the document?
Indeed, Chair.
Yes.
On first investigation, we were of the view that perhaps the one related to BT, who at the time had a quotation very close to the number, which is 635 million, but we later discovered that there was a proposal from CNR to the effect of 635,851,000. Moreover, as we say, the last letter, which is C under recommendation, says letter to be issued to CNR to commence negotiation. So too does 9114 read letter to be issued to CNR.
Yes, yes. But you say your team did speak to Ms. Mhleja,
Yes, Chair.
and you put this to her,
Yes, Chair.
and you say she could not explain it.
On many questions, she could not explain the sequence
Yeah.
of events, nor what led to particular decisions that she took.
And what did she attribute that to? Did she say she had forgotten, she couldn't remember, or she just stared at you?
Chair, in certain instances, she couldn't remember, but I should place on record that the interview with her was rather abrasive. Yeah.
Was she hostile?
In a manner, yes, Chair.
Yes. That interview wasn't recorded by
It
any
is
chance?
transcribed, Chair. It
It
is
is
part of the
transcribed.
transcripts that will be delivered.
Yes. Okay. And what about Mr. Gama and Mr. Anuj Singh? They had left Transnet by the time you...
Memorandum to him at the time. At the time, we were investigating the large part of the 1064 locomotives transaction, which was the procurement process followed. Whilst we did touch briefly on the issue of relocation, this particular memorandum was not put to.
And Mr. Anuj Singh?
He had left Transnet.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And then at 9114, as we pointed out, on the signature lines for Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe, Mr. Naya, and Mr. Selenga, respectively, it's in manuscript written C attached.
Yes, Chair.
Did you investigate who wrote that on each line?
When we asked Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe, she didn't have a clue.
Did she say definitively that she did not, at least insofar as her name is concerned, write C attached on this document?
Definitively, yes.
And she said, what, did she claim that she doesn't know who wrote that?
Yes.
And under what circumstances?
Yes, but she did own up to compiling the memorandums.
So then she would be aware of both memorandums for CNR, firstly for
Sorry.
635 and then subsequently for this 669.
Sorry, the memorandum, let me say the memorandum,
This memorandum
yes,
of 669.
of 669.
Did you have a discussion with her about seemingly another memorandum for 635?
For the purposes of our interview, we didn't rather ask the question from that perspective.
Okay.
Because as I say, amongst other things, the interview was hostile.
All right, thank you. Chair, it's just been brought to my attention, I apologize.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll take the tea adjournment. It's 12:30 now. We'll resume at 11:45.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn. Proceed.
Thank you,
Selu.
Chair. Mr. Mnyandu, when we rose for tea, we were still trying to make sense of the memo for the approval of 669, trying to reconcile pages 9114 to 9115. The queries I had in respect of that document are addressed. Thank you. I don't know if the Chair has got any other issues arising from the document, or whether there are other comments you, Mr. Mnyandu, would like to make in respect of that document before we move on.
No, we can move on.
No, they aren't, Chair.
Thank you. Then you may proceed.
Chair, we then proceed to slide number 15
Yes.
to give an overview of the team composition and then deal with what the mandate that was sought for the team was going to be.
Yes.
The titles are the Group Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Anuj Singh at the time, the Chief Executive of Transnet Engineering, Mr. Tamsan Ngachiani, the Group Head of Supply Chain Management, which was Mr. Gary Peter, as well as a representative from the Executive Legal and Compliance, Mr. Silingo.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Mnyandu. I'm looking at the screen in front of me, and I seem to have a different feed. I seem to have there, now it's back. I'll just check in that we are on the right computer. It is sorted. You may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. At slide number 15, we highlight that the team, insofar as the memo goes, was going to determine the approach that would best yield benefits for Transnet as well as the OEMs by taking into consideration two things.
Yes.
Quantifying different negotiation levers and the reasons for a revised pricing.
Yes.
And two, reviewing the accuracy and assumptions in the models in order to inform the negotiations.
Yes.
So this is the Transnet team.
Indeed, Chair. Chair, under the header, motivation, the memo highlighted in order to move to Durban, there would be different heads of additional costs.
Yes.
The memo summarized these different heads of costs as labor costs,
Yes.
material costs, warehousing costs, technical support, operational and logistical effects, physical transportation of materials and resources, incremental warehousing costs, financing and risk costs due to time constraints and delays. The memo also illustrated that there would be ancillary benefits for Transnet and savings associated with the two OEMs now manufacturing from Durban.
Your heading at slide 16 speaks to the 19th of May 2015 memorandum,
Yes,
and
Chair.
that is our page 9111.
Yes, Chair.
The issues listed there.
That's what I was exactly trying to look at. So we haven't moved away from the memorandum, but you're discussing what it dealt with.
What the memorandum
Yeah.
sought
No, I think
approval
what
for.
confused me is that I thought she was saying she was moving away from the memorandum.
I had understood Mr. Mnyandu to say he's done with the memorandum, but clearly not.
Yeah,
Chair,
yeah.
thank
I
Okay.
apologize, Chair.
No,
We are
that's
done
fine.
with looking at the copy itself, but
Yes.
summarizing some
Yeah.
of the salient parts of the memo.
Yeah, okay.
My question then, as you list these issues or these factors that explain the cost of relocation,
Indeed, Chair.
and we must understand from your slide that those issues emanate from the memorandum itself.
Indeed, Chair.
Then I go back to my previous question. In light of the fact that the actual proposal comes in June 2015, how do the drafters of this memorandum in May know the factors that will be taken into consideration in computing the cost of relocation? Were you able to establish?
It's in relation to the memorandum received earlier in May, which is for the amount of 635 million rand odd.
Do you have that memorandum,
We actually do have a copy,
a complete one?
yes. So not the memorandum, the proposal from CNR. Apologies, Chair.
Okay.
Was the proposal by way of just a letter or a more comprehensive document?
It's a comprehensive document.
Okay, but it's not here in the bundle?
No, Chair.
Oh, so in that memorandum, the figure is 635?
Indeed, it is so, Chair.
Yes, which is where the 635 may have been taken from?
Indeed, Chair.
Okay.
Okay, then, again, let's look at sequence. Remember, we started at 9 million. That's what
Yes.
we got from CNR.
Yes,
That's then updated to 318.
yes.
Must the chair understand that that 318 million proposal was subsequently followed by another of 635 million?
Indeed, Chair.
And then the yet to come in June of 2015 after this memo of 669.
Indeed, Chair.
Okay, so we are now we are talking about third and fourth proposals now.
Indeed, Chair.
Thank you. We're
What-
following, yes.
The memorandum was approved by Mr. Gama, we make the note, on 19 May 2015.
Yes.
Going forward, the following personnel made up the negotiation team. Mr. Anoj Singh, Mr. Gary Peter, Mr. Ndipio Silinga, Mr. Emma Moletsane, Mr. Tamsang Ngachiane, as well as Ms. Lindiwe Mdleje.
For the record, I think that's Miss E. Mulotsane, not Mr.
Oh.
That's what we have on the slide.
Sorry, which one?
Miss E. Mulotsane,
Mulotsane.
on behalf of TIA, he had said Mr. Mulotsane.
Apologies.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's-
okay.
Apologies, Chair. Ms. E. Moletsane.
Yes.
Chair, we now take you through the proposals submitted on behalf of Bombardier Transportation, BT, having taken you through the proposals of CNR, after which we will then look at the process followed internally in order to approve the relocation costs. Bombardier Transportation.
I'm sorry, I thought earlier on you had said Bombardier Transportation had not put up a proposal when they were asked to. Did they subsequently do?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, and this is what we're talking about now.
Yes, Chair. You will recall that we made the point that on the 6th of June, they addressed a letter to Transnet Freight Rail, recording that pursuant to the issuance of a letter by the then Group Chief Executive, Mr. Brian Molefe, which was after the signature of the main agreement as well as the subcontract, they were now willing to consider being located in Durban, and they would work on the necessary documentation in order to communicate to Transnet what would be the cost difference of them being located elsewhere.
Thank you.
And by 6th of June, it's 2014. to be exact.
2014.
Yes.
To clarify, Chair. Chair, following on from what we've just discussed then, BT presented 3 proposals to Transnet. Whilst in between these 3 proposals, there were letters that were issued by BT in which BT sought to try and explain or substantiate its proposals. The proposals were submitted during September 2014, a second proposal submitted during April 2015, and the third proposal, which was eventually accepted, albeit with a discount applied, is the July 2015 offer, which Chair will find from page 63 of the bundle that the Chair has this morning.
And that be your tab 4 of your presentation.
Under tab 4 of the
Yes.
presentation. Just to take the,
That is tab for the presentation is exhibit BB8C.
Yes, Chair.
I think we just needed to put that on
On
record
right,
because we
indeed, Chair.
might not have put it on record. So tab number
4.
4.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Yes.
Chair, under tab number 4, what you will find is email correspondence from Ms. Lindiwe Mdleje, in which we are able to gather and confirm that the proposals from BT were indeed shared with Transnet, because she, in turn, on 20 June 2015, was sharing the different versions with her colleagues at Transnet. And overleaf are the proposals from Transnet. The Chair need not consider them intensely, because both in our report as well as in the presentation, we highlight that the relocation costs, insofar as BT was concerned, were made up of the transportation costs, logistics costs, the loss of industrial footprint synergies. And that's how the amount of 634 in the first instance, 634,316,000 was made up, which then in April became an offer of 634,315. The chair will see this now from slide 19 of the presentation. And then lastly, as we said, the offer of 618,457,125 rand. As we've said, those are the 3 points that the proposals on BT were based on. We make the point in our report, there is, however, no conclusive breakdown of the costs which would seek to support the amounts that were claimed in each respect.
What is the loss of industrial footprint synergies?
Chair, as we understand it, it is an argument that says, if I, as an OEM, am based in Gauteng, I have got relations, synergies with particular suppliers who would not necessarily be able to supply me with the materials I need if I were to be located in a different location, or would do so at an extra cost.
So, effectively saying, if I operate from Johannesburg,
Yes, Chair.
I have, in the course of my business, certain people that I deal with who may supply me with certain things for my business, and I've established certain relationships with them, and maybe I get discounts. And if we operate from Durban, I'll take that into account when I quote to you. But if I'm going to be in another place, I won't have those discounts, and therefore I would pay more than I would pay if I was in Johannesburg, and that I have to pass on to you.
Indeed, Chair.
Yes. Okay. But it should. Does it warrant to be an item under loss? Because all I really need to do is look at how much I will get things in Durban and say, well, my price will go up because this is what I will be paying for things that I must get.
Chair, in order to understand, can I rephrase the question and ask whether it warrants a price variation as such? Chair, it would depend on the negotiations of parties that have contracted at arm's length, but it would not automatically arise that there should be an additional cost. No.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And if anything, it might result in a saving.
Indeed, Chair.
Now, I look at your tab for TTM4 at tab 4 of BB8C. And in particular at page 71, I see that the 634,316,000 rand is given as a fixed price, and it's a globular amount. I've looked through the document, and unless I misread the document, I don't see the breakdown of that amount per item as you have listed, in a sense that I don't see what portion of that 634 million is allocated for transportation costs and for logistics, and what balance then is computed as a loss of industrial footprint synergies.
Indeed, it is so, Chair, there is no breakdown. Hence, we make the point that there is no breakdown of the costs that is in support or would be in support of the amount claimed.
Were you able to get an understanding from any member of Transnet that you interviewed as to the exact meaning of loss of industrial footprint synergies?
No, Chair. I must record that we did not necessarily engage them on that concept.
And I think Mr. Sidumedi pointed out that you had as yet not engaged with Bombardier on these issues.
Yes, that is correct, Chair.
To the extent that logistic costs are listed as separate from transportation costs, what did that entail?
Chair, I think it would only be explainable or explained by the drafters of, or those who considered the two to be different. Because when one speaks of transportation costs, one is referring to logistics. That is what we would understanding.
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
And you didn't get a chance to talk to Bombardier about that.
Chair, as has just been pointed out, we
Yes.
have not yet engaged Bombardier in relation to these issues.
Yeah. But it would appear that Transnet didn't interrogate that as well, right?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Now, Mr. Mnyandu, again, looking at the papers, please refer to TTM4 at page 63 of BB8C. And that you said is the email from Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe of 20th June 2015, circulating to her colleagues the Bombardier proposal.
Yes.
I read that email and it says, and I quote, "Good day, please find attached Bombardier proposal as requested. 1, initial proposal dated 26 September 2014. And as bullets, additional information dated 2nd October 2014, further clarification dated 10 October 2014, detailed explanation dated 3rd November 2014, and secondly, revised proposal dated 10 April 2015. When I peruse TTM4, I seem to find only a letter from Bombardier dated 26 September 2014, a document termed Final Notice of Contractor Proposed Variation with respect to Transnet's request to move TE's facility location from Codisport to Durban, and that would appear at page 72 to also be dated 26 September 2014. It is then followed by a schedule of deliveries.
Yes, Chair.
I don't seem to have, under TTM 14, this additional information dated 2nd October 2014, the further clarification of 10 October 2014, detailed explanation of 3rd November 2014. You confirm that?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, now my question is, were you able to locate these particular documents that are listed here, issued in October and November 2014?
Yes. To place matters into context,
Yes.
this was information that came to hand pursuant to the completion of our report, together with the statement that will be submitted to the Commission.
Yes.
We will provide the further clarifications, which are documents that were attached to the particular email.
Okay.
Rather, what the email seeks to do is to at least give credence to the fact that the proposals from Bombardier were indeed received by Transnet.
Okay. So then we can expect, through the submission of a supplementary statement, the documents list dated 2nd October 2014, 10 October 2014, 3rd November 2014, and the revised proposal of 10 April 2015.
I confirm, Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I go back to that issue of what the logistics costs referred to, as well as the other item? Did you ask Ms. Mdletshe what these were and what her understanding was of the logistics costs insofar as they were a separate item from transportation costs? Because if they agree to paying for certain things, at least they should understand what those things are.
Chair, again, to place matters into context insofar as the discussions ahead with Ms. Mdletshe, one, the exchanges in relation to the issues of relocation were rather hostile. Two, she gave the impression that she, being an SCS or supply chain services personnel, would not have the expertise to deal with an assessment of the proposals, notwithstanding the fact that she was part of the negotiation team. Therefore, we took the view that to try and take her through each of the proposals would not be
serve any purpose.
Would not be serving any purpose for our investigations.
Yes, okay. But you are not sure whether the lack of cooperation arose just from the fact that she seemed to be hostile, or she might genuinely not have known certain things because they fall outside her expertise.
Chair, I am not sure.
Yeah. But I would have thought that if you are a member of a negotiation team, even if something falls outside your expertise, but at least from those in the team who have the expertise, you would want to understand what is this about, so that if you as a part of a team are party to a decision to say we approve this, you can at least explain if you are asked.
Chair, I think, yes, that is what one would expect, but I think matters will be placed into better context as we move forward and we deal with some critical email communique amongst the negotiation team members.
Yes, okay, thank you.
But before we get there, Mr. Mnyandu, again, I'm at TTM 4, page 63 of your bundle. I see the addressees there appear as Mr. Gary Peter, Mr. Tamsan Ngajiani, Mr. Anuj Singh, and Mr. Yusuf Lahaye.
Indeed, Chair.
Following on the chair's question, we understand that you haven't had opportunity to interview Mr. Anuj Singh on the basis that by the time you undertook your investigations, he was no longer an employee at Transnet.
Indeed, Chair.
Now, did you have opportunity to interview Mr. Gary Peter, Mr. Yusuf Lahaye, Mr. Tamsan Ngajiani? And if you did you raise these issues with any one of them?
We had the opportunity indeed to interview Mr. Tamsan Ngajiani.
Yes.
He pointed out that he was only able to attend a single meeting in respect of the negotiations and that he played no further role. Now, we will get to the no further role at a later point, Chair.
Okay.
We therefore did not take him through the proposals submitted by the OEMs. We did have the opportunity also to speak to Mr. Yusuf Lahaye.
Yes.
Who gave us a version that he had interrogated particularly the CNR proposals, and he had shared certain comments, and they were not necessarily attended to. That is a part that we will also get to in the presentation.
Yeah. And insofar as Mr. Gary Peter is concerned?
Mr. Gary Peter was no longer under the employ of Transnet as at the time we undertook our investigations.
Okay. Thank you. You may proceed then with your presentation.
Chair, having given you the sequences of the proposals related to both OEMs, we now take you to initial meetings held with them arising from the approval by Mr. Sebonga Gama for the negotiations. That particular meeting was held, or rather those meetings were held on the same day, the same location being OR Tambo International Airport on the 19th of June 2015.
That memorandum was 19 May or 19 June? 19 May.
19 May.
Oh, okay.
On 19 June, the negotiation team members from Transnet met with the representatives of the respective OEMs. When we conducted our investigation and we were provided with a transcript of the meeting, for reasons that we'll deal with now, we could not make sense of it so as to include it in our report. However, in consultation with the evidence team leaders for the Commission, we agreed that we should not deprive you of the document. And in so doing, in providing it to you, which is TTM 7, is to be found at page 97 of Exhibit BB8C. We also then sought to summarize the points of discussions that were held with each of the representatives. Chair, you will see that at 97 and 98 are registers, or I should say properly attendance registers, dated 19 June 2015, for meetings held with the representatives of the negotiation team.
Did the meeting that we are talking about involve Transnet meeting with each one of the
Indeed, Chair.
entities, not jointly?
Indeed, Chair.
Yeah, okay.
The transcript would have you believe as such, at least. Unfortunately, and the reasons that we were referring to when we considered whether or not we could make sense of the transcript in the first place, it does not have an introduction. It does not alert you to who is speaking at any point. The speakers are not recorded. The proposals that are referred to on the 19 June 2015 meetings, in respect of both OEMs, do not actually tell you which versions of the proposals are being discussed. However, what we sought to do, as I say, in slide 21, in the slide that follows, is to summarize what the discussions were about.
Yes.
We make the point that as you've just requested clarification, Chair, separate discussions were held with CNR and BT. The first discussion was held with representatives of CNR, which included Mr. Mark Shaw, who was the sole director of BEX, a company that is already been dealt with, Chair. We also make the point, as I've already tried to outline, that the transcript doesn't give you an indication as to who is speaking. You really have to follow the conversation in order to understand that this would be a Transnet representative and this would be a Chinese CNR representative. Apologies. In both instances, Transnet's representatives referred to proposals received from the OEMs without necessarily giving an indication what were those versions of the proposals. Notably, Transnet personnel addressed each OEM on the negative economic downturn in South Africa. We sought to highlight that, Chair, when we summarized the discussions, because if these were individuals in the meeting concerned with the economic downturn in South Africa, it would be strange, a word you've used, Chair, that they would agree to an aggregate amount of 1.2 billion in an instance where, as far as we have found, the costs are wholly unjustifiable and have not been substantiated. In respect of both proposals of the OEMs, the Transnet personnel emphasized the request for the OEMs to also demonstrate what would be the savings occasioned by them being located in Durban.
Before we leave tab 7, I'm at page 100. And according to this document, this would be the first page of the transcript.
Indeed, Chair.
It starts with, as you rightly say, unfortunately, the transcript doesn't identify who each speaker is. It starts with a speaker stating, that was because of me in Cape Town and the mediator was kicked out of this process.
Yes, Chair.
That start would indicate to me that this is not the full transcript of that meeting, that there had been an engagement prior to that speaker making that comment.
Indeed, Chair.
Were you able to determine how long, I'll call it the unrecorded portion of the meeting, if it's that, it had taken before this speaker stated as they did?
Chair, we were not able to. We are awaiting information on who the transcribers were.
Yes.
We are awaiting this information from Transnet Freight Rail.
And if I go to page 123, even with BT, I see the same problem. The transcript kicks off with the speaker saying, the warehousing, am I mistaken? And that's not a usual way of starting a meeting or a conversation.
It certainly isn't, Chair.
Were you provided with the actual audio recording of this meeting?
No, unfortunately not, Chair.
What is the source of the transcript?
It is officials in the Supply Chain Services Department of Transnet Freight Rail.
Okay. Did you go back to the same employees to inquire whether they have a more complete transcript of these meetings?
Indeed, Chair, they indicated they do not, and that it is in that respect or in that regard that we have requested and are still awaiting the details of the company that would have transcribed the meeting.
Do you know the identity of the company that transcribed?
Not at this moment, Chair.
I take it that you have inquired as to their identity.
Yes, Chair, it is in respect of that inquiry that we are awaiting information from officials at Transnet Freight Rail.
How far backward was the request made by you to the officials of Transnet?
We've had discussions about it at least in April of this year.
Okay.
Yes.
And since then, you have received no further information?
We have received no further information, and the basis is that the knowledgeable person is not at Transnet.
Not at Transnet anymore?
Yes, that is Ms. Mdletshe, who is on suspension.
Okay. So if we were to make inquiries, are you suggesting that Ms. Mdletshe would be somebody to speak to at least lay our hands on a complete version of the transcript?
Insofar as we've been advised, Chair.
So far you've been advised. Thank you. Thank you. May proceed.
Chair, the OEMs were also requested to clarify assumptions made and the contingencies built into their proposals so that Transnet could seek to assist the OEMs with whatever challenges they have. Both OEMs were requested by Transnet for a price reduction and a revised offer. The price reduction would be in the range between 15% and 25%. It was agreed that once the negotiations were finalized, there would be a variation order to the main contract concluded, the main contract concluded being the Locomotive Supply Agreement. It was further agreed that CNR in particular would revise its proposal in order to communicate what was not detailed in its proposals at that point, being the milestone payments, the scheduled delays, and supplier development. The revised proposals, it was agreed with both OEMs, would then form part of the variation order that would be signed off. There is particular reference to the Transnet team seeking approval from its board subcommittee on 30 June 2015. At least it is recorded in the transcript in the part that deals with CNR.
Okay.
The board subcommittee that we would understand it to be would be the Board Acquisitions and Disposals Committee.
Now, with the limitations or constraints that came with the transcript of
Yes, Chair.
these meetings,
Yes, Chair.
were you able to form a view as to whether the Transnet negotiation team interrogated how, for example, with regard to CNR, costs that were initially estimated to be around 9 million rand could go up to 600 and something million rand. From that discussion, were you able to see that they raised this issue and how it was explained? Or is that something that you can't tell from the transcript?
Chair, from the transcript we are unable to tell.
Yes.
But from email correspondences that will be covered in the presentation, we do see some questions raised by some of the members.
Members, yes.
But we do not have evidence that those were dealt with, let
Yes.
alone dealt with sufficiently.
Yes, yes.
Yes, Chair.
And the discount that Transnet requested the OEMs to give them of between 15 to 25%. Did you get to know how Transnet arrived at those discounts? Because if you have been told that the price or the cost will be 600 and something million, and you say, please give me a discount of 15 or 25%, one is entitled to assume that you mean you would be quite happy with a 15% discount, so you could pay hundreds of millions for something that could have been 9 million rand and maybe even less.
Yes, Chair. There is neither a document nor is there anything in the transcript that suggests or discloses how the request for a discount in that range was arrived at.
It might be difficult for you to say this, but I'm going to ask you, and you can indicate if you are able to. Did you get any sense whether the Transnet negotiating team was negotiating effectively or was carrying out their duties to negotiate the best price for Transnet to the best of their abilities, or were they just going through the motions? And I accept that you might not be able to say so, but I'm just wondering whether,
Chair,
having gone through the transcript, you got any impression?
Chair, it is a question that is linked to the findings that we make. And therefore, from that perspective, I am able to record that the negotiation team was not carrying out the negotiations in a manner that would best serve the interests of Transnet, at least.
Okay.
At least, Chair, insofar as firstly or principally in relation to the advice that was given in the beginning by PwC when they said you must interrogate or ask the OEMs to justify their costs.
Yes.
And what we understood from the second part of the advice is that if it was going to be prohibitive, then you should seek alternative measures in order to go to locations that would not cost too much.
And your investigations did not reveal that that advice was followed or taken further in any way?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may just inquire along the same lines, when you started with your presentation, you indicated that PwC, I think you said it was, or you told us as a fact that Transnet Engineering had different facilities, some in Durban and some in Uitenhage, and both were an option, both Durban and Uitenhage were an option.
Yes, Chair.
Did you find any documentation as regards whether or not there was a consideration for Uitenhage to see if it might result in cheaper costs than Durban?
No, Chair, but it's relevant to also point out that having weighed out the pros and cons in relation to the stimulation of the economy along the coastline, the particular recommendation was firstly Durban.
Okay.
But the line of questioning, as I understand it, Chair, is, okay, so if we proceed from the basis that Durban is now going to be cost prohibitive, is there a study that was done pursuant to that in order to consider another location?
Yes.
Yes.
And
No, we
there's
have
no
not
indication
discovered
that
such.
was done?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, at slide 23, having dealt with the fact that there was just a single meeting that was held, we now wish to draw your attention to critical communication amongst the negotiating team members. With particular reference to volume 13 at page 9119.
I'm sorry. By the way, Mr. Mnyandu, the leader of the negotiation team of Transnet was who?
The Group Chief Financial Officer,
Yes.
Mr. Anosh Singh.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Chair. With particular reference, Chair, to volume 13 at page 9119.
Yes.
We draw your attention to an email sent by Mr. Gary Peter. Apologies, Chair. It's 9119 is where the appendix cover is. So we should actually go.
Yes, it's 9120. Is that right? 9120.
You have, in your slide, you indicate that is Appendix 11.
Yes.
At 9119 is Appendix 12.
Oh, apologies.
And I see that it's a string of 3 emails. If we start at 9121, it's from Miss Lindiwe Mdletshe to Mr. Yusuf Lahaye. That's then followed at 9120 with a response from Mr. Yusuf Lahaye to Miss Lindiwe Mdletshe. And lastly, at the top of 9120, it's once again from Mr. Yusuf Lahaye to Miss Lindiwe Mdletshe.
Yes,
So,
Chair.
is that you wanted us to find the email from Mr. Gary Peter?
Yes, Chair.
Give me the file.
My apologies, it's actually 9117.
Page 9117.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. So it is the page numbering on the slide that is wrong.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. We have corrected to 7.
Chair, as is clear, this is an email from Mr. Gary Peter, sent on 20 June 2015 at 12:08. The email is sent to Mr. Tamsanga Giane. It is sent to as well Mr. Anosh Singh, Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe, Mr. Yusuf Lahaye, and Mr. Ndipiwe Silinga. The subject reads CNR comments. The email reads, Dear all, below please find my comments and questions for CNR. I have not received the BT proposal as yet and can't comment other than what I raised yesterday. I am heading off to family function away for the rest of the weekend, but can't be contacted on my phone. Chair, what then follows are the actual comments.
I wonder whether what was meant was, but can be contacted on my phone. But
Contextually, that it would
doesn't seem
suggest
to-
that, yeah.
The sense doesn't seem to, but it's okay. That's him, that's not you.
Yes, Chair.
Before
Yes.
you proceed and deal with the issues that he raises, this is dated 20th June 2015.
Indeed, it is so, Chair.
And on the previous day, on the 19th of June 2015, there was a meeting with both OEMs.
Indeed, Chair.
Was Mr. Gary Peter part of that meeting?
Yes, he was.
So he went into that negotiation with BT without having seen the BT proposal if this email is to be accepted. Because he says, I have not received the BT proposal as yet.
Yes, Chair, unless he was referring to a revised proposal that ought to have been sent overnight.
Okay.
Because we at least know from our records that there was a BT proposal of April
Yes.
2015.
Okay.
Going back to Appendix 11, Mr. Gary Peter says, there is no mention of SD or ED. For all contracts, we normally either keep the percentage of the contract value, the SME, which is not understood, or make it higher depending on the change. I suggest keeping it the same percentage of now greater contract value as the change is created due to our choice. Yusuf to check whether there were any contingencies in initial offer, as if there was, then it must be taken into account in this calculation. There is a typo, we believe, if they knew we were going to send them to Durban, so maybe they already priced some of the risk in the initial offer. Get list of suppliers they are using in Gauteng and total material they expect from them, as they say they are moving 1.3 billion rands material, but doesn't make sense as they don't have many suppliers set up yet, per my info. They need to prove the 1.3 billion expected value. Page 3 talks of limited manufacturing skills and engineers in the area, but the plant is situated in Bayhead, where there are many manufacturing companies and an abundance of engineers. They also talk of the same team having to move to Durban, yet charge on a number of occasions for more labor skills, but they're sending the same people. So why charge for this on more than one occasion? 54.4 million rand added size of team for labor and quality assurance and CST Transnet Engineering need to advise if the team in KZN has such low skill to justify this additional labor from OEM. 178.8 million for material is significant. The inflationary percentage used is 5.5%, which they say is CPI, yet CPI is 4.5%. Additionally, they say they use 1.8% per month for 4 months, which adds to 7.2%. Why? They also say it's multiplied by total project cost. Why total project cost and not just the material? If it's material, it should be 1.3 billion as per page 7 of 12. This number is surely overstated by some margin. The second part of material costs being 16.8 million rand storage would be incurred if it was Durban or KDS, which is meant to denote Kudo Sport, so should not be an additional cost unless I'm missing something. Technical support in my mind already has some charge in the additional labor, charge for engineers, and additional quality assurance, yet they charge 38.5 million rands for additional support, especially for maintenance and post-production. Why maintenance and post-production? Under technical, the additional cost of on-site service is high. Against list of suppliers and how this is broken up as seems excessive. Chair then goes on to deal with transportation, in particular in the second sentence of the last paragraph on 9177. He notes they charge 94.2 million rand for additional transport and advise it's for 55% local content, yet they have 45% imported, which won't have any travel costs once it's reached the port. We need this benefit back estimate as close 90 million rand if you use their logic. Turning over leaf at 9118, he then says Yusuf to check assumptions they have used, possibly PwC, like transport costs, average CPI, insurance costs, shelving and storage per square meter costs, which seem extremely excessive. Transport also include local testing for 1.8 million, but what is the additional cost that wouldn't have been incurred in Kurusport? Warehousing. Transnet Engineering to check this, as I recall them asking Transnet Engineering to do what warehousing in initial bid. So if they charging extra, then I believe it's a typo, 8 should charge them extra based on their numbers, like 55 rand per square meter versus 35 rand per square meter in Kurusport, which seems excessive and needs to be checked. They also charge for fencing and security and office furniture. Why is that additional over Kurusport? Same goes with additional trucks and forklifts. Why more in Durban versus Kurusport for the same work? Doesn't make sense. Under warehousing, 11,200 rand square meter for shelving and storage is ridiculous and impossible. Need to fix this. Again, they charge for additional staff of 90 under warehousing cost of 24.5 million plus 5.8 million rands for engineers. This is now the third time they are charging for additional people. Yusuf to check financing costs and hedging numbers. Also, industry standard for training is 3%, not 6%, so 3.6 million is overstated. Contingency must be talked about. This is fixed price. Regards, Gary.
Yes.
Yes. Chair, those are numerous concerns, attacks, and requests for clarifications that Mr. Gary Peter had.
And not insignificant concerns, one may say.
And not insignificant concerns, one must add, especially when one has regard to the amounts that Mr. Gary Peter is attacking or seeking clarification in respect of throughout the email correspondence. Mm-hmm. Chair, would now like to take you to Appendix 12, which is to be found found on page 9120
Yes,
of volume 13.
yes.
On halfway through the page of 9120 and on 21 June, the chair will recall that Mr. Yusuf Lahaye was requested to check a number of things by Mr. Gary Peter on the previous day. He sends the email and he says, "Dear all, my comments as follows. Increasing the team size does not make sense considering the learning curve will mitigate this requirement within a short time. 2, negotiating with suppliers will eliminate the inflationary costs related to 4 additional months. In any case, material costs generally don't increase on a monthly basis. Thus, the impact should not be as large as 1.8%. Also, 1.8% for 4 months does not equal 5.5%, but rather 7.2%, which is excessive." From the explanation at 3, from the explanation provided, the incremental cost of procurement does not relate to the move to Durban. This should not be charged. In any case, 9% interest is excessive. 4, the additional technical support requirement in Durban does not make sense. The cost of this technical support should have been included in the original price. 5, on-site service by technicians should have been included in the original price. 31.5 million rand for travel and relocation seems excessive. 6, can the transport not be done by TFR via rail containers? If so, then insurance costs would also be minimal, as would be internally insured. 7, 11,200 rand per square meter for shelving seems excessive. SCS can research this. 8, has consideration been given to TP, which is Transnet property, Chair, or Transnet freight rail property for the warehousing? 9, why the additional forklifts? 10, how much is the incentive and relocation cost per staff member? 11, labor inflation does not increase on a monthly basis. The impact could possibly only be at the end of the project. 12, labor inflation rate applied at 5.5% for the full year, whereas it should only be for 4 months. In brackets, he writes, cell E23 in staff sheet. The 13th area of concern is the additional cost to roll over the hedge must be checked by Treasury. At this point, we are to understand that would be Transnet Treasury. 14, additional bond costs must be checked by Treasury. 15, contingency risk of 4% and risk provision of 9% is unexplained and seems to be additional profit. This seems excessive. 16, obtain a detailed list of suppliers being used in Durban versus those in Johannesburg. The cost of the long-term maintenance consulting does not relate to the move to Durban. In brackets, cell E29 staff. This should not be charged as it should have been included in the original contract. 18, labor inflation is doubled, and there is a reference in brackets, ref, cell D7 and cell E23 in inverted commas, staff, close brackets. Best regards, Yusuf Lahaye.
So on the 20th of June, Mr. Peter raises a range of concerns
Indeed,
regarding
Chair.
the computation of costs by the OEMs
Indeed, Chair.
and requests Mr. Lahaye to do some calculations.
Indeed, Chair.
This email you've just read does not necessarily seem to suggest that Mr. Yusuf Lahaye was dealing directly with the concerns raised by Mr. Peter, but instead it appears to me at least to be Mr. Lahaye raising his own set of concerns.
Indeed, it is so, Chair.
Okay. Then what transpires next?
Chair, what then transpires next is that on 23 June, Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe shared via email, and the email is to be found at Appendix 13. That's volume 13, page 9122. It will be 9123, Chair.
Yes.
Chair, in order to follow the email trail properly, we need to read the one that is at the bottom first. Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe sends the email and says...
Sorry, Mr. Mnyandu, the mic, your voice is...
Apologies, Chair.
Thanks, sir.
The email from Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe reads, "Good day. Please find attached revised CNR proposal for your review and comments. Please note that both meetings that were scheduled to take place today, 23 June 2015, were postponed. BT's proposal is still outstanding. They are having an alignment session this afternoon, and they will revert back to us today with an indication on when the revised proposal will be submitted to Transnet." Then it says, "Kind regards." Chair, we then go to the middle section of the page. The email is sent by Mr. Yusuf Lahaye to be in response to Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe. He says, "Hi
And
Lindiwe,
that's 25 June, eh?
25 June 2015,
Yeah.
which is 2 days after the email from Ms. Mdletshe. The email reads, "Hi Lindiwe, their proposal has not changed from the previous submission except for their new offer on payment terms. As such, the comments per my mail over the weekend would still apply. Their payment terms offer needs to be considered in light of Transnet cash flow situation for which Treasury must advise." Chair, on investigation, the 20th of June 2015 was a Friday, which was when Mr. Gary Peter sent his email. The response from Mr. Yusuf Lahaye was on the 21st, being a Saturday. And therefore, when he refers on the 25th of June to an email over weekend, he is referring to Appendix 12, which we have just considered.
Okay.
Chair, there then seems to be silence. There is a break in communication insofar as email correspondences between the Transnet relocation negotiating team up until the 10th of July.
And so far, we have not seen any comments following that meeting, those two meetings at, I think you said OR Tambo. You have not seen any comments from the senior people in the team, Mr. Anoch Singh,
Indeed,
for
Chair.
example. Okay. all
Indeed,
right.
Chair. Additionally, we have not seen any email correspondences sent to Transnet Engineering for them to
Yes.
check the considerations of the team, concerns of the team members,
Yes.
nor has there been any correspondences sent to Transnet's Treasury Department for them to validate, amongst other things, the additional bonds that are required and whether they would be acceptable, nor have we seen any correspondences sent to the Transnet Property Division, which would be considered for items like warehousing in a different location.
Yes.
Chair, as we say, slide 27, there then seems to be a break in communication up until the 10th of July 2015, on which date begins the process to finalize the relocation costs.
And just so we are clear, following Mr. Yusuf's last communication of 25th of June, reminding Ms. Mdletshe that the issues I raised remain outstanding, I haven't received an answer thereon. And Mr. Gary Peters' own concerns, as reflected in the email you read into the record. And that period, 23rd June, to the date you say, 10th June 2015, finalization begins. Is there any record of at least Mr. Gary Peter being addressed on the concerns that he raised?
No, there isn't, Chair.
And similarly, I would take it, neither are Mr. Yusuf Lahaye's concerns raised.
No, there isn't, Chair. Particularly in respect of him, there isn't a response to the email of 25 June.
Which reminds them of the earlier email where he set out these concerns.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
And did you come across any suggestion that there was a meeting of the members of the Transnet negotiating team where they discussed the way forward in the light of the concerns that had been raised prior to talking about finalizing the agreement?
No, Chair. We were not able to come across any record that demonstrates a meeting having taken place.
Yes. And to what extent are you able to say that the emails to which you have referred exchanged among members of the negotiating team, to what extent are you able to say that those to which you have referred are basically the only ones that were exchanged among the members of the negotiating team of Transnet in regard to these negotiations after meeting with the two entities?
Chair, it is pivotal at this point to record that the email correspondences we've got were received from Transnet directly. It is also important to record that we also have had access to Transnet's server. It is possible in certain instances where the subject of a particular email does not indicate that which is discussed in the email, and therefore you would not be able to find it. But insofar as our searches on the server have confirmed, there were no further engagements in relation to these issues.
But you say there might be some possibility that you might have missed some if the subject didn't.
Chair, what I'm trying to clarify is that insofar as our searches have gone on the two OEMs being concerned, there were no further engagements.
I'm talking about communication among the members of the Transnet negotiating team in regard to their negotiations with the two OEMs. To what extent these emails to which you have referred could be said to be the only ones that were exchanged among this team to say, what are we going to do with these, with the proposals from these entities?
Perhaps, Chair, in order to assist the Commission in this regard, one can recollect that when Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe was interviewed and she was questioned about the steps that needed to be taken insofar as the comments in particular of Mr. Yusuf Lahaye are concerned, her response was, Mr. Yusuf Lahaye in any event was not part of the negotiation team. So that gives the indication that I, as Lindiwe Mdletshe, did not need to take his concern or concerns seriously. So that, together with our searches and the investigations conducted, therefore, leads one to the conclusion that there were no further engagements.
But insofar as through technical means of which I know nothing, that investigators would know, their computers were checked to see that really there were no other communications that you might have missed.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Yes, Chair.
So you feel quite confident that there probably were no other emails exchanged among them?
Indeed, Chair.
Yes, okay, thank you.
At least or through Transnet servers?
At least not through Transnet servers.
Yes, but of course, it would be strange if it was through other servers, isn't it?
Strange, yes, Chair.
Because this was business, this was work-related.
Indeed.
Yes, okay, all right.
Thank you. Then you're taking us now to the date of 10th July 2015.
I'm sorry, just before that. Unless they had a meeting, that is the Transnet negotiation team, unless they had a meeting to which they made no reference in emails among themselves to say, let's have a meeting. And unless they had a meeting to which they made no reference in emails, then it would be then it would look like they went into finalizing the agreement without having had another meeting to talk among themselves or to have an exchange of ideas through emails to say, how do we approach this? Do we have concerns? How do we address concerns that have been raised?
Yes, Chair.
And that would be quite strange, yeah?
Strange, Chair.
Yes.
And if, on that score, I may then refer you back to 9123, the email from Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe of 23 June 2015. At the bottom email at 9123, she states to the addressees, please note that both meetings that were scheduled to take place today, 23rd June, were postponed. You see that?
Indeed, Chair.
First question, do you know what these meetings were? Are these meetings with the OEMs or presumably meetings of the negotiating team?
We are unable to clarify, Chair. Safe to state that in our searches again on the server, these meetings had not been discussed earlier. So it might have been that they were arranged by other means other than by way of email communication.
And based on your responses to the chair's questions, I take it that up until 15th July, those meetings were not held as they were postponed from the 23rd of June. So they are postponed on the 23rd of June, and I take postponement to mean they shall be held on a different date.
Yes, Chair.
And you are suggesting that at least whatever that date may be, it was not before the 15th of July. There is no record of those meetings being held before the 15th of July.
Chair, before the 10th of July.
Before the 10th of July, my
Yes.
apologies, 10th of July.
Yes, Chair.
Secondly, we have heard from a few witnesses and as well as Mr. Sidumedi. It seems common practice that when these matters are considered in Transnet tender-related and proposals are submitted for evaluation, that a cross-functional evaluation team is either appointed or some evaluation team is appointed, whatever it may be called. And at the conclusion of whatever their mandate is, they produce a report.
Indeed, Chair.
Did we have a cross-functional evaluation team in respect of these relocation proposals?
No, we did not, Chair.
So we only had the negotiating team as you listed there.
Correct, Chair.
Did the negotiating team produce a record, a report on their negotiations with both Bombardier and CNR?
There isn't a record of such a report, Chair.
Did you inquire about one?
We did inquire about one. When one supposes, or rather has regard to the fact that there is a report or a draft report from the Transnet internal audit team, in respect of which we'll get to shortly, and we were told there wasn't such a report prepared.
Was a reason advanced for why none was prepared?
No, Chair.
And in this regard, who did you have discussions with? Who so advised you?
It was firstly Mr. Yusuf Lahaye,
Yes,
and then secondly Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe.
thank you. There.
So, your investigations did not reveal that there was much discussion among the Transnet negotiation team on their negotiations with these two entities on these very high amounts that were supposed to be looked into.
Chair, can you please ask the question again?
Your investigations, it would seem, did not reveal that there was much discussion among the Transnet negotiating team on these proposals that came from these two entities.
Yes, Chair.
Indeed, you found nothing that suggested that the negotiation team of Transnet interrogated these amounts in any way, in any serious way.
Other than the email correspondences that we've just referred to, Chair, we were not able to find such communications.
And of course, in regard to one, I think Ms. Silo said, Ms. Mdletshe said Mr. Lahaye was not even part of the negotiation team.
Yes, Chair.
Except, Chair, that was said by Mr. Mnyandu, not Ms. Sallo. I wouldn't have that knowledge.
I thought you were referring to some email.
No.
Okay.
He said that
that's
arose
fine.
during the course of interview, yes.
Okay, no, Mr. Mnyandu, not Ms. Silla.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
So, okay, I guess we will get to the point where ultimately now they agree to something.
Indeed, Chair.
Yes.
Which is a topic you start now on your slide 27.
Which is a topic we start now on slide 27, Chair, and we take you to Appendix 40 at 9126, Chair. We'll no longer mention the cover of the appendix.
Yes.
At 9126 in volume 13, Chair, there is an email sent by Mr. Gary Peter on 10 July 2015. It reads, Hi, Lindy.
Sorry, for reference, at the bottom of 9126, right?
Correct, Chair.
Yes.
Correct, Chair. For your reading from the bottom of the page. Hi, Lindiwe. Feedback from the meeting this morning is that BT will be sending us another letter providing further clarity on their offer. This is expected on Monday. Can I ask that you update all the documentation, i.e. memo for us to send to the acting GCE, which is for Group Chief Executive, for approval of CNR and BT proposals, and letter from GCE to CNR and BT accepting proposals.
Okay.
In order to save time, should the team copied be happy with the proposals, we can then effect sign-off quickly. Please also ensure that the TIA, which is for Transnet Internal Audit, Chair, sign-off from Emma is included in the memo. Then it says, Gary Peter, Group Chief Supply Chain Officer.
Before you go to the response to that email, the first paragraph of that email reads, feedback from the meeting this morning is that BT will be sending us another letter.
Yes, Chair.
That would suggest that there was a meeting held that morning. Either Mr. Gary Peter was or was not a part of that meeting, but Ms. Lindiwe Mdletshe might not have been, as he's reporting to her.
Indeed, Chair.
That would be a correct interpretation. Now, were you able to establish what this meeting was and between who it was?
No, we were not able to, Chair.
Okay. And I know you have said you haven't had opportunity to interview Mr. Gary Peter.
Mr. Gary Peter.
We will shed light, I guess, the day he appears.
But what is clear from that email is that he says that BT was going to be sending a letter providing further clarity on their offer. And we know that Mr. Gary Peter was one of those who had sent emails giving comments. Is that right?
Indeed, Chair.
So here, at least in relation to BT, he talks about a letter that would be sent giving clarity, and we don't know whether it was going to be giving clarity on some of the issues he had raised or whether it was clarity on other aspects.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Chair, might I add?
Yes.
But what we do know
yes.
is that there is still to be a clarification
Yes.
received from BT.
Yes.
However, Ms. Mdletshe is now being requested to prepare the necessary memorandum for the
Yes.
approval
Yes.
of
Yes.
both the cost in respect of BT
Yes.
as well as CNR.
Yes. Which may mean that they know they've been given clarity verbally, and what's left is just that clarity be in writing. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is probably what you have in mind, that
No,
they are going ahead before getting clarity.
No, Chair, it's not what I had in mind. I agree that that's one way of looking at it.
Is there another way you think?
Chair, I think you and I are at idem. We are in agreement that there would be another way.
Okay, all right, yes.
But even then, we at least accept that it is clarity that Ms. Mdleche did not have as she prepared the memo.
Indeed, Chair.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, you may continue, thank you.
Chair, sticking to or staying on page 9126, going further up the page, there is an email from Ms. Lindiwe Mdleche on 10 July at 4:14 p.m. She writes, "Hi Gary, I will prepare as requested and circulate for comments by Monday. Kind regards, Lindiwe Mdleche."
Yes.
Chair, what we would like you to note in respect of the email correspondence sent by Mr. Gary Peter on that day, being 10 July 2015, is that Mr. Yusuf Lahaye, notably, is no longer copied in the email exchanges.
Yes.
And it was Mr. Gary Peter who directed specifically to Mr. Yusuf Lahaye certain tasks and asked him to do certain things.
Indeed, Chair.
Just remind me again, what was Mr. Lahaye's position?
He was an executive manager in the finance department of the operating division acquiring the locomotives, Transnet Freight Rail.
Yes.
Yes.
That would seem me to suggest it was somebody whose concerns should be given some attention.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, okay, yes.
Yes, Mnyandu?
Chair, turning over to slide 28 of the presentation, we now take you through the approval process arising from the email sent by Mr. Gary Peter. Firstly, in relation to CNR, on 22 July 2015, Ms. Lindiwe Mdleche compiled a separate memorandum for the approval of the costs of CNR at an amount of 647,181,494 rand. Chair, this memorandum is to be found at volume 13 at page 9135.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mnyandu, before the chair does that, I would like us to go back to 9126. In that email chain, at the top is a further email from Mr. Gary Peter, but this time addressed to Mr. Selinga.
Yes, Chair.
And it seems to suggest that the document is ready and is requesting Mr. Selinga to review the legal clauses and caveats only.
Yes, Chair.
So by the 14th of July, the document was for all intents and purposes ready.
Yes, Chair.
Can I take you back? The Monday on which it was said the letter of clarity from BT would be received, what do you know what date that Monday would have been?
It would have been Monday, 13 July, Chair.
Okay, and the memorandum that Ms. Mdleche was preparing seems to have been ready by when?
The 22nd of July.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, so then I see that Mr. Gary Peter requests Mr. Selinga to have regard to the document and review the legal clauses and caveats raised in both proposals, especially in the BT offer.
Yes, Chair.
Firstly, were you able to consider a document that reflects the caveats particularly raised in the BT proposal?
Yes, we were, Chair.
And what were those in brief?
In summary, those spoke to the amount, first of all, being offered by BT for the
Yes.
relocation costs. It spoke to the payment terms in relation to the offer, as well as a change in the facility to be recorded as Durban Bayhead.
Okay. So, and they wanted those issues addressed before they could finally sign. Is that their understanding?
Yes.
Okay. The email then goes further to say they raise some clauses which might have a significant impact. Please advise so that we can sign this off ASAP. That is Mr. Gary Peter on the 14th of July.
Indeed, Chair.
Okay. Now, do you have a record of how Mr. Silinga dealt with that request?
Indeed, Chair, it is dealt with in our report. The response is an appendix. It's just that we have not covered it in the presentation, but we can take the Chair through if we find the appendix on the report.
If you recall, perhaps the essence of that appendix, you may tell the Chair.
The appendix, the concerned was a response from Mr. Ndipiwe Silinga in which he noted, 1, 617 million rand as an offer from BT is okay if that's what you have agreed. 2, the other clauses were fine. However, he raised a particular concern or a comment in relation to, I believe, the delays, but I stand to be corrected, Chair.
Okay.
It would be a document that we should look at as the appendix. But indeed, there was a response that dealt with the BT issues in that form.
Okay, thank you. Chair,
We
we are
haven't
mindful
achieved what we hope to achieve in terms of,
what we set out to achieve
yes,
time-wise.
but there hasn't been any delay. We have been engaging Mr. Nyandu with his important issues. How much more time did
He's got 7 slides to go, Chair.
Yeah.
I guess he could indicate to us, if we don't engage him any further, how long that might take him. But if the Chair engages him and myself, perhaps that might double or triple the time required.
Well, I need to be out of here now.
Yes, Chair.
I was hoping that I was hoping to have been out of here at 12:30, and I was hoping that 1 o'clock would be fine. So it hasn't happened. I'm wondering whether we shouldn't make space if Mr. Mnyandu is available for tomorrow to finish properly before we start with the next witness.
We could, Chair, if Mr.
Mr.
Mnyandu is available there.
Chair, I confirm I am available.
You are available.
Yes, indeed.
And for that purpose, we could start at 9 o'clock, considering there are 7 slides left that should not take us more than an hour.
Yes.
I'm quite mindful that we don't impact the time of the next witness.
Yes, yes. The witness for tomorrow, I understand, is likely to take the whole day.
Yes, Chair.
Yes. What's your own estimate of how much time we need
It's
I'm trying to think whether we should say 9 o'clock or 9:30 for starting.
I would, it's got references, the 7 slides have references to certain documentation.
Yeah,
And as I have seen, it is when we consider the documents that perhaps we take slightly
Yeah.
more time.
Yeah.
I see about 4 or 5 documents that he
Yes.
cross-refers.
yes,
I think I'd be more comfortable with 1 hour, Chair.
yes.
Otherwise, if we do 9:30, then we may force Advocate Pretorius to run till 5.
Yes.
And he might not be quite happy with that, so.
Yes. No, I think I think let's start at 9:30.
9:30.
Yeah, let's start at 9:30, because there may be something else that I need to attend to. And
Indeed, Chair.
if we start at 9, there might be some difficulty. Let's start at 9:30,
Catering for 1 hour.
and try and finish at least within an hour.
Yes, Chair.
Or 45 minutes, depending. Okay, all right. We will adjourn then for now. So Mr. Mnyandu will start at 9:30 tomorrow. So if you could be back tomorrow.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes. We'll adjourn until tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. We adjourn.
Thank you, Chair.